Welcome to KGW News at 5 o'clock. I'm Laurel Porter, and first at 5, demonstrators rallied again in Portland last night, and this time Mayor Ted Wheeler was among the crowd, even as federal agents used tear gas outside the courthouse. Federal officers already facing legal backlash for their tactics in Portland will now face even more scrutiny. Today, a pair of government watchdogs opened investigations into their conduct and use of force. Meanwhile, Portland's mayor suggests he has no plans to join protesters again tonight after what happened last night. Here's Kylie Boshi.
As downtown Portland braces for another night of protests, both the Justice Department and Homeland Security opened investigations into the conduct of federal officers. The internal watchdog, or inspector general for both agencies, launched the reviews following complaints from the public and Congress.
Gassing, assaulting, batoning peaceful protesters on the streets of our city, not here, not allowed, and we will put an end to it.
The far-reaching OIG investigations will examine officer training, compliance with ID requirements, legal authority, and use of force. Late Wednesday, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, who called for federal agents to leave town, was tear-gassed while joining thousands of protesters outside the federal courthouse. Earlier in the night, Wheeler, who's running for re-election, was heckled while trying to speak with the crowd.
We are on the front line here in Portland. If we are not able to get the federal administration to back off and leave our city, it will happen all across the United States.
Unbeknown to those on the ground, flight records show a small government airplane registered to Homeland Security flew circles over protesters for nearly 3 hours Wednesday. It's the second time in as many months a plane linked to federal law enforcement has flown over demonstrators in Portland, with no clear explanation of why or what information, if any, is being collected. Federal agents sent to Portland earlier this month by President Trump are facing legal backlash for tactics used against protesters. In court, a judge heard arguments from the ACLU, which is seeking to block federal agents from arresting journalists and legal observers. The feds have said they've done nothing wrong and will continue to protect federal buildings like the U.S. courthouse in downtown Portland, despite facing fireworks, fires, and breaches to a perimeter lined with high fences and barricades intended to keep people out. And among those voicing concern, 28 Oregon state legislators. They sent a letter to the Department of Justice and Homeland Security demanding that federal officers leave Portland. Kyle Boshi, KGW News.
Federal police reported they arrested 6 people last night, that agitators tried to break into the federal courthouse several times and threw, among other things, Molotov cocktails. We have reaction tonight from a protester and also a business owner. The protester said the effort is still about Black lives.
Yes, we're out here for Black lives, and then all this other stuff happens, but we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the fact that Trump is now involved in trying to change the narrative and make this a bigger thing about him. And we have to focus, because on the ground it's the same. For us down there, the feds coming in is really not much different than how we were getting treated before. They came in and we were fighting for, the defending of police in support of Black lives.
The business owner said downtown Portland is dying. First, because of the homeless problem, then the pandemic, and now because of the ongoing protests.
Things just change, and people don't want to live here anymore. People in our building are going to head to the suburbs. Business owners, the same thing. It's you don't have any support here, is the way that it feels, without the police. Again, their hands are tied, and the fact that we're going on 52, 53 days of this is ridiculous. You guys just need to get it together and solve the problem quickly.
Protests will continue tonight and into the weekend. Some businesses downtown have been advised to close up by 5 p.m. A Portland City Commissioner who said she believed police officers were setting the fires at Portland's protests backtracked again today. Commissioner Joanne Hardesty held a news conference late this afternoon. It was scheduled days ago, but yesterday Marie Claire printed an interview with Hardesty. In it, she said, "I believe Portland police is lying about the damage or starting the fires themselves so that they have justification for attacking community members." Hours after that interview came out, Hardesty released a statement trying to explain those comments. She said, amid ongoing protests, her emotions got the best of her. Today, Hardesty said protesters have absolutely set fires themselves. She also added this.
As the first African American woman on the city council, as someone who has had to just kind of put my own personal feeling aside because I have a job to do, there's been a lot coming at me, right, nonstop. And I can say when I'm wrong.
Portland's chief of police, Chuck Lavelle, called Hardesty's comments completely false and said he was disappointed. Hardesty today said she's called the chief to apologize, but the call went to voicemail. She added she hasn't yet called Daryl Turner, the president of the Portland Police Association. She said she'll do that Monday if everything goes well over the weekend. Washington Governor Jay Inslee announced tighter restrictions on bars, restaurants, fitness centers, and events as new cases spike. At restaurants, indoor dining will be restricted to members of the same household. Bars can't have indoor service at all. There's also a new ban on receptions at weddings and funerals that will take effect in 2 weeks. Ceremonies will still be allowed, but are restricted to no more than 30 people. Oregon reported another 331 new cases of COVID-19 today. The bars on this graph are new cases. The line is that 2-week average. The Oregon Health Authority says almost half of the 15,000 infections statewide were reported just this month. The agency says if the current transmission rate continues, new daily infections would rise to around 1,600 infections a day by the middle of next month. Today, the director of the Oregon Health Authority gave his take on where the state stands right now on the pandemic. OHA Director Pat Allen says Oregon is doing reasonably well on COVID cases and fatalities compared to the rest of the United States. This is in large part because of social distancing and mask directives here in Oregon. Now the bad news. We've seen a big increase in positive COVID cases in just the last week. Testing in Oregon is low compared to other states, and it's becoming more difficult to get testing supplies. Then there's the ongoing issue involving asymptomatic people.
They also tend not to test positive. The false negative rates for people who are asymptomatic are running in the range of 30 to 40%. And so the paradox is that when you get a negative test for COVID, it doesn't mean you don't have COVID.
Best advice, keep doing what so many of us have been doing already. Stay socially distant and wear a mask. Friday night lights will be shut off for a while in Oregon. The Oregon School Activities Association decided the start of high school football is on hold indefinitely. Same thing for cheerleading and dance. If your kids play other fall sports, they can't have games or competitions until the end of September. The board met this week. It says pushing fall sports out gives schools more time to focus on reopening plans. The state's current guidelines don't allow football because it's considered full contact. The news crushed many parents and their kids.
Why not leave it up to the parents themselves and create a waiver? It's as simple as that. If we as parents and the community got together and decided, okay, I want my child to play, why rob kids of their childhood?
If things can't happen in the fall, we'll look to move them and see if we can potentially fit them in later in the year, because we do understand how important it is. We want kids to play too, and we're working towards that. It's going to look different. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we know it's going to be different.
OSAA's executive board meets again the week of August 3rd to figure out more details about the future of fall sports.